Park stood in the center of the Grand Council chamber, surrounded by beings from 200 different worlds. The chamber was massive, built to hold representatives from every corner of the galaxy. Above him, the ceiling showed the stars real and burning bright. Around him, the aliens watched with eyes that glowed, blinked sideways, or saw in colors humans couldn't name. He wore a simple black suit, the uniform of Earth's diplomatic corps. No weapons, no armor. Just a human standing before the most powerful gathering in known space, and they were angry with him. The Velcrim commander rose from his seat. Thrace was his name, and he looked like a dragon from old Earth legends. Scales covered his body, deep red and scarred from battles. He was twice as tall as Minho, with claws that could tear through steel. When he spoke, his voice rumbled through the chamber like thunder. "The humans expand into our territory," Thrace said, pointing one massive claw at Minho. "They build colonies on worlds we claimed 800 years ago. They ignore our warnings. They mock our strength." Murmurs filled the chamber. Other species nodded their heads, or whatever they had instead of heads. The humans had been part of the galactic community for only 12 years. 12 years was nothing to species that lived for centuries. Humanity was new, young, weak. Minho waited for the noise to die down. He had learned patience in his years as ambassador. He had learned to smile when insulted, to bow when threatened, to speak softly when others shouted. Earth had sent him here with clear instructions. Keep the peace. Make friends. Don't start wars, Commander Thrace, Minho said, his voice calm. The worlds in question were surveyed by your people 800 years ago, yes. But no colonies were built. No outposts established. Under galactic law, a survey does not equal ownership. Our settlers found empty worlds and made them home. Thrace's eyes narrowed. Empty because we chose to leave them empty. They were ours by right of discovery. Then half the galaxy belongs to the Velcrim, Minho replied. Your ships have surveyed thousands of systems. Do you claim them all? The chamber erupted. Some species shouted in agreement with Thrace. Others remained silent, watching. The council director, a floating being made of light and gas, raised its appendages for quiet. The council recognizes the Velcrim claim, the director said. Its voice echoed in every language at once, translated by machines built into the chamber walls. The humans must withdraw from the disputed systems within 30 solar rotations. Minho felt his jaw tighten. He had expected this. The council always sided with the older species, the established powers. Humans were newcomers, outsiders. They didn't understand how things worked. Director, Minho said carefully, 50,000 human families live on those worlds. Children born under alien skies who know no other home. You're asking us to abandon them or relocate them. That will take time, resources, and 30 rotations, Thrace interrupted. Or we will remove them ourselves. The threat hung in the air like smoke. Minho looked at the Velcrim commander. He saw the arrogance there, the absolute certainty that humanity would back down. Why wouldn't they? In 12 years, Earth had shown itself to be peaceful, diplomatic, weak. The human fleet was small, or so the galaxy believed. 300 ships, most of them transports and science vessels. The few warships Earth admitted to having were outdated by galactic standards. Slow, fragile. Their weapons were primitive. When the Velcrim had performed military exercises near human space last year, their analysts had laughed at Earth's defenses. Minho had read those reports. He had sat in meetings where alien generals discussed how easily humanity could be conquered if they ever became a problem. It would take the Velcrim maybe 3 days. A week if the humans fought hard. They had no idea. Minho took a breath. He thought about the message he had received before coming here today. It had come from Earth's military command, from admirals and generals humanity pretended didn't exist. The message was simple. If they push, we stop pretending. For 12 years, Earth had hidden its true strength. When they first reached the stars and met the galactic community, they had found something unexpected. The species out here were peaceful. They had evolved beyond war, or so they claimed. Their militaries were small, ceremonial. They hadn't fought a real war in centuries. And humanity, fresh from a world that had nearly destroyed itself 3 times over, looked at their vast fleets and terrible weapons, and made a choice. Hide it, pretend to be weak, fit in, don't scare the neighbors. So Earth built colonies with civilian ships. They traded and explored and smiled. And in the outer solar system, where no alien sensors reached, they built something else. something the galaxy would never expect from the peaceful humans. Minho looked up at Thrace. The commander was smiling, showing teeth like knives. He thought he had won. They all did. Commander Thrace, Minho said quietly. Members of the council, I'm authorized to deliver a message from Earth's government. Another plea for time? Thrace laughed. More begging? No, Minho said. A warning. The chamber grew quiet. Even the director's glow seemed to dim slightly. Minho chose his words carefully. For 12 years, Earth has been a peaceful member of this community. We have followed your laws, respected your territories, avoided conflict. We did this because we wanted to be part of something greater than ourselves. We wanted to prove that humanity could evolve beyond its violent past. He paused, letting his words sink in. But understand this, Minho continued, his voice harder now. We have been holding back. We have been trying to fit into your civilization. We have hidden what we truly are, because we didn't want to frighten you. But if you force our hand, if you threaten our people, if you start a war you think will be easy? He looked directly at Thrace. You will learn what humanity kept hidden. Thrace laughed again. Other species joined in. The sound echoed through the chamber like mockery. To them, this was a joke. The weak human, making threats he couldn't back up. Your 300 ships against my 5,000, Thrace said. I accept your challenge, Ambassador. The Velcrim Empire declares war on humanity. We will remove your colonies ourselves, and when we are done, Earth itself will learn to obey. The council erupted in noise. Some species protested, others cheered. The director called for order, but nobody listened. Minho stood in the center of it all, perfectly calm. He had delivered his warning. They had laughed. Now humanity would show them the truth. Minho turned and walked toward the exit. His security team, 2 quiet men in dark suits, fell in beside him. Behind him, the council argued about war timelines and territorial rights. They would argue for hours, he knew. They would debate rules of engagement and acceptable casualty rates. They would treat this like a game. Humanity would not. As Minho boarded his shuttle, he pulled out a small communication device. He typed 4 words and pressed send. The message was encrypted, sent through channels the galaxy didn't know existed. It reached Earth in seconds, then bounced to 100 secret locations across the solar system. The message was simple. Protocol unchained. Authorization granted. On the far side of Jupiter, in shipyards built in the shadows of dead moons, lights began to turn on. Ships that had waited in silence for 12 years came to life. Weapons that could crack planets were loaded and armed. Soldiers who had trained in secret put on their armor. The galaxy thought it was about to fight a weak enemy. They thought this would be easy. They were about to learn the most important lesson in human history. Never mistake restraint for weakness. Never assume silence means inability. And never ever laugh at someone's warning. The war was coming, and humanity was done holding back. The message reached Earth at 0400 hours. Admiral Jiwan was asleep when her emergency comm went off. She answered it still half dreaming, expecting another battle report or surrender offer. What she heard made her blood turn to ice. New Busan is gone, the officer said. Velcrim forces attacked from orbit. They use plasma bombardment. The entire colony is... There's nothing left, Admiral. Jiwan stood there in her quarters, the comm device shaking in her hand. New Busan, 4 million people. She had visited that colony once. It was beautiful. Built in a valley with purple mountains and 3 moons hanging in the sky. Children played in parks. Families grew gardens. It was everything humanity hoped to build among the stars. Now it was ash. Within an hour, Jiwan was back in the war room. The screen showed footage from satellites that had survived the attack. New Busan was a smoking crater. The cities were gone. The farms were burned. 4 million people had died in less than 10 minutes. Dr. Hyeji stood in the corner, tears running down her face. Around the room, officers worked in silence. Some were crying. Others showed no emotion at all, their faces locked in expressions that spoke of rage too deep for words. Who ordered it? Jiwan asked quietly. Velcrim General Krex, intelligence reported. He's at a bunker on Velcrim Prime. The attack was revenge for their losses at Kepler Station. Revenge, Jiwan repeated. The word tasted like poison. They murdered 4 million civilians as revenge. An officer approached carefully. Admiral, Earth Command is calling an emergency meeting. They want your recommendation on response. Juan looked at the screen showing New Busan's remains. In her mind, she saw those children in the parks. The families in their gardens, all gone. Murdered because the Velcrim couldn't accept defeat. Something broke inside her. Not her mind. Not her sanity. Something deeper. The last thread of restraint that had held humanity back even during war. For 12 years, Earth had tried to be better. To show the galaxy they had evolved beyond their violent past. They had held back even during battles, trying to minimize casualties, trying to be merciful. And this was their reward. 4 million dead, prepare the fleet, Ji-won said. Her voice was cold, empty. We're going to Velcrim Prime. Admiral, an officer said hesitantly. Earth Command hasn't authorized. I don't care, Ji-won interrupted. Get me a channel to all fleet commanders, now. Within minutes, every ship captain in the human fleet was listening to Admiral Ji-won's broadcast. Her face appeared on their screens, and they saw something that made even hardened warriors pause. Her eyes held no warmth, no mercy. Just pure focused rage. The Velcrim murdered 4 million civilians at New Busan, Ji-won said. 4 million people who never held a weapon. Children, families. They were killed as revenge. As a message, she paused. Here's our message, no mercy. No prisoners. We're going to Velcrim Prime. We're going to end this. Not just the war. The entire Velcrim military. Every ship. Every weapon. Every commander who thought it was acceptable to murder civilians. We're done holding back. We're done being merciful. They wanted to see what humanity is truly capable of. Let's show them. The channel closed. Across the fleet, ships began preparing for departure. Crews loaded weapons with expressions that promised death. Marines checked their armor, their rifles, their combat knives. Fighter pilots ran pre-flight checks, thinking about New Busan, thinking about revenge. Captain Taiyang sat on the bridge of the Shadow of Seoul, his usual smile gone. All stations report ready, he said quietly. Set course for Velcrim Prime, maximum speed. On the Velcrim homeworld, General Krex watched reports of the human fleet approaching. He should have felt fear. Instead, he felt satisfaction. The humans were angry. Good. Anger made people make mistakes. They're bringing their entire fleet, an aide said. 3,000 ships. They'll reach us in 2 days. Let them come, Krex said. Velcrim Prime has the best defenses in the Empire. Orbital stations. Planetary shields. Ground-based weapons. They want revenge. They'll die trying to get it. What Krex didn't know was that humanity had stopped caring about casualties. Their own or anyone else's. The human fleet arrived at Velcrim Prime like a swarm of locusts. 3,000 warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel simultaneously, surrounding the planet from every angle. The Velcrim defenders immediately opened fire. Orbital stations launched missiles. Planetary cannons fired beams of energy. The Velcrim fleet, what remained of it, moved to intercept. Admiral Ji-won watched from her flagship. All ships return fire. Primary targets are military installations. But understand this, if they hide behind civilians, we fire anyway, no mercy. No exceptions. The human fleet opened fire with everything they had. Railguns hammered orbital stations until they broke apart. Missiles swarmed over defensive platforms. Energy weapons burned through shields that had protected Velcrim Prime for centuries. Captain Jinha Song commanded the dreadnought Righteous Fury, one of humanity's largest warships. It carried enough firepower to crack a small moon. She watched a Velcrim orbital station explode and felt nothing. No satisfaction, no regret. Just cold efficiency. Target the next station, Jinha ordered. Continue bombardment until all military targets are eliminated. The battle for Velcrim Prime lasted 3 weeks. Not because the Velcrim put up a strong defense, but because humanity was methodical, systematic. They didn't rush. They carefully targeted every military asset in the system. Every warship. Every weapon platform. Every supply depot, and they made sure the Velcrim watched, made sure they understood what it meant to murder 4 million civilians. On the ground, Velcrim citizens huddled in their homes, watching the sky light up with explosions. They had been so proud when their fleet went to conquer the weak humans. Now human ships controlled their orbit, and there was nothing they could do about it. After 2 weeks, the Velcrim space defenses were gone. Not damaged, gone, every ship destroyed, every station reduced to debris. The skies above Velcrim Prime belonged to humanity. That's when the ground assault began. General Mirai Han stood in the command dropship, watching the planet grow larger below. She was 50 years old, gray-haired, and had spent 30 years planning for invasions that never happened. Now she was about to conduct the largest ground assault in human history. "All units, remember your objectives," Mireille said over the command channel. "We're here for the leadership. The civilians are not targets. Anyone who fires on non-combatants will answer to me personally." Sergeant Daehyun led the first wave. His Marines dropped from orbit in armored pods, crashing through the atmosphere like meteors. They landed outside the capital city, where General Krex and the Velkrim High Council had taken shelter in a massive bunker. The bunker was supposed to be impenetrable. Designed to survive anything short of planetary destruction, it had walls 10 meters thick, energy shields, automated defenses, and a garrison of 2,000 elite Velkrim guards. It lasted 4 hours. Human Marines attacked with precision that terrified the Velkrim defenders. They used breaching charges that could punch through any wall, combat drones that swarmed through corridors, and when they encountered resistance, they responded with overwhelming force. Daehyun kicked down a door and found himself facing 20 Velkrim guards. They raised their weapons. He raised his. The difference was that he had 30 years of combat training, and they had maybe 5 years of ceremonial duty. The fight lasted 10 seconds. By hour 3, the Marines had reached the inner bunker. By hour 4, Daehyun was standing in the command center watching General Krex try to activate a suicide device. "I wouldn't," Daehyun said, pointing his rifle at the general's head. "You're going to face trial. You're going to answer for New Busan. Death would be too easy." Krex looked at the human sergeant with hatred. "We were defending our empire." "You murdered 4 million civilians," Daehyun interrupted. "That's not defense. That's genocide. Now you're going to pay for it." The Velkrim High Council was captured alongside Krex. All 12 members, the leadership that had ordered the attack on New Busan. They were bound, loaded onto ships, and taken to Earth orbit for trial. Ambassador Minho prosecuted personally. The trial was broadcast across the galaxy. Every species watched as human lawyers presented evidence of the attack. Satellite footage of New Busan burning, intercepted communications where Krex ordered the strike. Testimony from Velkrim officers who had protested and been overruled. The evidence was overwhelming. Krex and the High Council had murdered 4 million people in violation of every galactic law about warfare. They had targeted civilians deliberately, knowing exactly what they were doing. The verdict came quickly, guilty on all counts. The sentence was death. But execution would come later. After years of imprisonment where they would think about what they had done, humanity wanted them to suffer, to understand the weight of 4 million deaths. Back on Earth, in a secure meeting room, Admiral Ji-won sat with Ambassador Minho, Dr. Hyeji, and other senior leaders. They had won. The Velkrim Empire was broken. The Unity Pact had dissolved. Every species in the galaxy now understood that humanity was not to be threatened, but the cost had been terrible. 4 million civilians dead, Hyeji said quietly, plus the soldiers we lost in battle, plus the millions of Velkrim killed during the siege. Was it worth it? "We didn't have a choice," Minho said. "They attacked us." "They Ambassador Minho Park returned to the council chamber, but this time everything was different. He didn't stand in the center like a defendant. He walked to the raised platform usually reserved for senior council members and stood there. Nobody stopped him. Nobody dared. The chamber was less crowded now. Some species had sent their representatives home. Others refused to attend, afraid that even being in the same room as a human might make them targets. The ones who remained watched Minho with new eyes. No longer was he the weak newcomer. Now he was dangerous. "Ambassador Park," the director said. Its voice carried less authority than before. "The Council requests that Earth consider a ceasefire. The destruction of the Velkrim Third Fleet was unexpected. Perhaps negotiations." The Velkrim Empire declared war on humanity. Minho interrupted. "They threatened our colonies, promised to attack Earth itself. We responded with force. That's how war works, isn't it?" Silence filled the chamber. An ambassador from the Korthan Dominion stood. His species looked like walking crystals, beautiful and cold. "The Unity Pact has formed," the Korthan said. 7 species, 5,000 warships. "We don't want to fight you, but we cannot allow humanity to threaten galactic peace." Minho almost laughed. "We threatened peace? We lived quietly for 12 years. We followed your laws. The Velkrim started this war. We're just finishing it. By destroying an entire fleet, another ambassador demanded. Without warning? Without mercy? We gave warning, Minho said quietly. Right here in this chamber. I told you what would happen. You laughed. Now you're angry because we kept our promise? Back on Earth in the war room, Admiral Jiwon watched reports coming in from across the galaxy. The Unity Pact was gathering their fleet at a staging point near Kepler Station. 5,000 ships, just like intelligence had predicted. They would attack humanity's core colonies in one massive strike, hoping to overwhelm Earth's defenses. They didn't know humanity was ready. Waiting. All fleet commanders report ready, an officer said. 3,000 ships in position around Kepler Station. Defensive platforms are online. Marine companies are standing by for boarding actions. G1 nodded. 3,000 against 5,000. Bad odds by numbers alone. But human ships were different. Every vessel in the fleet had been built with one purpose: war. Real war, not the ceremonial conflicts the galaxy knew. Admiral, Dr. Hayeji approached, carrying a data pad. The Unity Pact ships are using standard galactic shield technology. Our weapons will cut through them easily, but... She hesitated. But what? The casualty estimates are high, very high. We might destroy their fleet, but we'll lose ships too. Thousands of people on both sides. I know, G1 said. Alert the fleet. When the battle starts, primary targets are military vessels only. We're not here to slaughter civilians. 10,000 light-years away, the Unity Pact fleet began moving. 5,000 warships, the largest military force gathered in 300 years. On the flagship, Velcrim Emperor Corvin stood beside Corthan Fleetmaster Talnus. Your humans surprised us once, Corvin said. It won't happen again. 5,000 ships against their few hundred. The battle will be short. Talnus nodded, though doubt flickered in his crystalline eyes. The Council has calculated we'll lose maybe 300 ships. Acceptable casualties. They had no idea they were heading into a trap. At Kepler Station, Captain Taeyang Lee sat on the bridge of the Shadow of Seoul. His ship was one of 50 stealth destroyers positioned around the battlefield. The Unity Pact couldn't see them. Their sensors slid right off the human ships like water off glass. Captain, his weapons officer said, enemy fleet entering the system. Count confirms 5,000 vessels. Good, Taeyang said. Wait for the Admiral's signal. Let them get close. The Unity Pact fleet arrived at Kepler Station expecting to find a small human defensive force. Instead, they found 3,000 warships waiting for them. The human vessels hung in space like predators, dark and angular, covered in weapons the galaxy had never seen before. By the gods, Talnus whispered. They have 3,000 ships. Where did they come from? It doesn't matter, Corvin snarled. We still outnumber them. All ships, attack formation. Destroy them. The Unity Pact fleet charged forward, their weapons powering up. They were confident. Numbers would win the day. They had fought this way for centuries. Their battles like chess games where the side with more pieces usually won. But humans didn't play chess in space. They played something much darker. Admiral Jiwon watched the enemy fleet approach. She waited until they were committed, until turning back would be impossible. Then she gave the order. All ships fire. The battle began. Human railguns launched projectiles at speeds that made enemy point defense useless. Missiles swarmed through space, each one guided by artificial intelligence that learned from every miss. Energy weapons cut through enemy shields like they were made of paper. The Unity Pact fired back, but their weapons moved too slow. Their targeting systems couldn't lock onto ships that moved with impossible grace. Their shields, designed to stop the gentle weapons of galactic warfare, failed against human firepower. Ships exploded, hundreds of them. The Unity Pact formation collapsed as vessels tried to scatter, tried to find targets, tried to understand how they were losing so badly. That's when the stealth destroyers attacked. 50 ships decloaked right in the middle of the enemy formation. They appeared like ghosts firing at point-blank range. Unity Pact ships that had survived the initial assault now found themselves under attack from inside their own ranks. Sergeant Daehyun Shin stood in the drop bay of the assault carrier Incheon. Around him, 200 Marines waited in powered armor, holding weapons that could tear through alien hull plating. He was 40 years old, a veteran of Earth's secret military, trained for this moment his entire career. Listen up, Daehyun shouted. We're boarding the Velcrim command ship. Our target is the bridge. We take their leaders alive if possible. Dead if necessary. Remember your training. These aliens haven't fought ground combat in centuries, we have. Move fast, hit hard, show no mercy. The Marines roared in response. The carrier shook as it launched toward a damaged Velcrim dreadnought. In space, Commander Suki Nam flew her fighter through the chaos of battle. She was 26 years old, the youngest ace in the fleet, with reflexes that seemed almost supernatural. Her fighter moved between enemy ships at speeds that would kill most pilots. Blue Squadron on me, Suki called over the radio. We're targeting that carrier group. Hit their hangar bays, prevent launch. 12 fighters followed her in a dive that made alien pilots' blood freeze. They moved too fast, changed direction too quickly. When the Velcrim tried to target them, they were already somewhere else. Suki's weapons locked onto a carrier's open hangar. She fired and the missiles streaked forward. Explosions blossomed inside the enemy ship. Secondary explosions followed as fuel and ammunition cooked off. Splash 1 carrier, Suki reported. Moving to next target. On the Velcrim command ship, Emperor Corvin watched his fleet die. The screen showed destruction everywhere. Ships breaking apart. Formations collapsing. The humans were winning and they made it look easy. Retreat, Corvin ordered. All ships fall back. Too late, Admiral Dren said quietly. They've surrounded us. We're trapped. That's when the hull breach alarm sounded. Humans had boarded the ship. Sergeant Daehyun led his Marines through the corridors of the Velcrim ship. The aliens tried to fight back, but they moved too slow. Their weapons were designed for ship-to-ship combat, not close quarters. Human Marines had trained for urban warfare, room-clearing, hand-to-hand combat. They swept through the ship like a storm. Bridge ahead, Daehyun said. Breach charges ready. The door exploded inward. Marines poured through, weapons raised. Velcrim guards tried to stop them and died in seconds. Within 2 minutes, Emperor Corvin was on his knees, hands bound, surrounded by humans whose armor made them look like demons. Emperor Corvin, Daehyun said, you're under arrest for war crimes. Come quietly or we drag you. Corvin looked at the human sergeant with hatred and fear. You can't do this. I'm an emperor. You were an emperor, Daehyun corrected. Now you're a prisoner, move. In space, the battle was ending. Of the 5,000 Unity Pack ships that had attacked, less than 500 remained. They were scattered, damaged, fleeing in every direction. The human fleet had lost 43 ships. 8,000 people were dead. It was the worst loss humanity had suffered in the war, but they had destroyed 90% of the enemy fleet. Admiral Jiwan stood in the war room, looking at the casualty reports. 8,000 dead. Good people. Soldiers who had trained in secret for years, who had believed in protecting Earth. Now they were gone. Admiral, an officer said quietly, the Unity Pact is requesting terms of surrender. Tell them we'll accept nothing less than total capitulation, Jiwan said. All military forces stand down. All leaders turn themselves in for trial. They started this war. We decide how it ends. Dr. Hyeji entered, her face pale. Admiral, I need to speak with you. In private. In Jiwan's office, Hyeji pulled up data on a screen. I've been analyzing the battle. The casualty numbers. Jiwan, we killed almost 2 million people today. They attacked us, Jiwan said. I know. But look at this. Hyeji showed footage from the battle. Enemy. 1 year after the war ended, Ambassador Minho Park stood in the new council chamber. It had been rebuilt on Earth orbit, a symbolic gesture showing humanity's commitment to galactic unity. The chamber looked similar to the old one, with seats for representatives from 200 species. But now there was one major difference. The human ambassador no longer stood in the center. He sat on the council itself, with veto power over major decisions. The galaxy had learned that ignoring humanity was dangerous. Now they had no choice but to listen. The council recognizes Ambassador Park of Earth, the director said. The floating being of light looked smaller now, dimmer, as if the war had drained something from it. Minho stood and looked around the chamber. Many of the same faces who had laughed at his warning now watched him with barely hidden fear. Some species had refused to send ambassadors at all, still too afraid to be in the same room as humans. Members of the council, Minho began, I present the Earth Accords, a new framework for galactic civilization, a set of rules designed to prevent another war like the one we just survived. He activated a holographic display. The Accords appeared in the air, translated into every galactic language simultaneously. Species around the chamber read the terms with various expressions of surprise, anger, or relief. The core principles are simple, Minho continued. First, transparency in military capabilities. No more secret fleets, no more hidden weapons. Every species declares what they have. Second, mutual defense treaties. An attack on one member is an attack on all. Third, intervention rights against aggression. If one species attacks another, the Council can authorize military response. A Korthan ambassador stood, his crystalline body reflecting light in sharp angles. These accords give enormous power to the Council. More specifically, they give power to Earth, the species with the strongest military. Yes, Minho said simply. They do, because the alternative is what we just lived through. War that killed millions? Destruction that set some species back centuries. We're offering a way to prevent that from happening again. By making Earth the galactic police, another ambassador challenged. By making everyone responsible for peace, Minho corrected. Earth will share our military technology. We'll help other species build defenses. We'll train your soldiers. But in return, you agree to these rules. You agree that military power exists to protect, not to conquer. The chamber erupted in debate. Some species supported the accords immediately, grateful for any structure that might prevent another conflict. Others protested, calling it human imperialism disguised as peacekeeping. While they argued, Admiral Jiwan Choi stood in a military yard on Earth, watching something that would have seemed impossible a year ago. Human engineers worked alongside Velcrim technicians, rebuilding a warship that had been destroyed during the war. The Velcrim workers moved carefully, still nervous around humans, but they worked. Admiral, Captain Taeyang approached. He looked older now, the cockiness gone from his eyes. War had taught him what victory truly cost. The decommissioning is proceeding on schedule. We've already scrapped 500 warships. Good, Jiwan said. Let the galaxy see that we're serious about peace. We keep enough ships to defend ourselves and fulfill Council obligations. The rest becomes scrap metal and spare parts. Some of the officers are upset, Taeyang said carefully. They say we're giving away our advantage. Our advantage was surprise, Jiwan replied. That's gone. Now our advantage is trust, or at least the beginning of trust. If we keep our full fleet, the galaxy stays terrified. If we reduce it, we show good faith. Taeyang nodded slowly. I heard Dr. Hyaji is giving away our weapon designs. Not all of them, Jiwan said. Just defensive technology, shields, point defense systems. Things that protect but don't threaten. We're keeping the big weapons locked up, just in case. Just in case, Taeyang repeated. He looked at the Velcrim workers. Do you think they'll ever forgive us? For what we did to their homeworld? Jiwan was quiet for a moment. I don't know. Maybe not. But we can give them the chance to rebuild. That's more than they gave New Busan. In a laboratory complex in Geneva, Dr. Hyeji Kang demonstrated new shield technology to a group of alien scientists. They watched with fascination as the shield absorbed energy weapon fire that would have destroyed old galactic defenses. The key is adaptive frequency modulation, Hyeji explained. The shield analyzes incoming weapons and adjusts in microseconds. We're sharing this with everyone, free of charge. A scientist from the Hexid Union, a species that looked like floating jellyfish, rippled with confusion. Why give this away? You could sell it for enormous profit. Because profit isn't the goal, Hyeji said. Protection is. If every species has strong defenses, then aggression becomes pointless. Wars become too expensive, too difficult. Peace becomes the logical choice. You assume everyone thinks logically? The Hexid scientist observed. No, Hyeji admitted. I assume that given the choice between dying in a pointless war and living in peace, most people choose peace. We're trying to make that choice easier. The scientists continued their work, alien and human researchers collaborating on technology that would have been impossible a year ago. It wasn't friendship yet, but it was a start. On a frontier world called Haven Station, Sergeant Daehyun Shin opened his bar for the first time. It was a simple place built from salvaged ship parts and local stone. The sign above the door read, "The Ceasefire" in 6 different languages. His first customers were a mixed group, 2 human marines still in uniform, a Velcrim merchant who walked in nervously, and a Korthan trader who had fought against humanity during the war. Daehyun served them all without comment. The humans ordered beer. The Velcrim ordered something that glowed faintly purple. The Korthan didn't drink but came to watch, curious about this strange human custom of former enemies gathering peacefully. I fought at Kepler Station, the Korthan said suddenly. My ship was one of the few that escaped. The bar went quiet. Daehyun polished a glass, waiting. You destroyed my entire squadron, the Korthan continued. 47 ships. 800 people. I watched them die on my screens. I'm sorry, Daehyun said simply. Are you? You were just following orders, yes? Doing your duty? I was, Daehyun agreed. But that doesn't mean I'm not sorry. War is horror even when necessary, especially when necessary. The Korthan was silent for a long moment. Then, surprisingly, he sat down at the bar. I'll have whatever the Velkrim is drinking. It was a small moment. One former enemy choosing to sit next to another. But small moments like this were happening across the galaxy. People learning to live together after war. Learning that the enemy had names, families, dreams beyond the battlefield. Meanwhile, in a training facility on Mars, Commander Suki Nam taught alien pilots how to fly like humans. Her students came from 20 different species, sent by their governments to learn combat techniques from the people who had revolutionized space warfare. Speed is life, Suki told her class. In combat, the faster pilot wins. You need to push your ships harder than you think possible, harder than your instincts tell you is safe. A young Velkrim pilot raised a claw. Human pilots have better reflexes. Our species can't match your reaction times. Then you train until instinct becomes faster than thought, Suki said. You drill until your hands move before your brain registers the threat. It's not about biology. It's about practice and will, she demonstrated, taking her fighter through maneuvers that made half the students sick just watching. But they learned. Slowly, carefully, they learned to fly like humans. Not because humanity forced them to, but because they chose to learn from the best. Back in the council chamber, the vote on the Earth Accords finally came. Ambassador Minho watched as species lit their voting crystals. Green for yes. Red for no. The display filled with light. 173 green. 27 red. The Accords passed. Minho felt a weight lift from his shoulders. It wasn't perfect. Some species would resist. Others would try to find loopholes. But it was structure. It was law. It was the foundation for peace. Ambassador Park, the director said, its voice warm for the first time in months. The Council recognizes Earth's commitment to galactic stability. Your species has proven itself capable of both war and peace. That is a rare thing. Thank you, Director, Minho replied. But understand, we never wanted war. We wanted to build, to explore, to be part of something greater. The galaxy forced us to show our strength. Now we're choosing to show our mercy. He looked around the chamber. To every species here, remember this, we warned you. We told you what would happen if you pushed us. You didn't believe. Now you know the truth. Humans are dangerous when threatened, but given the choice, we prefer to be friends, partners, allies. We held back for 12 years because we wanted peace. We stopped holding back because you left us no choice. Now we're holding back again, not out of fear, but out of hope. Hope that we can build something better together. The chamber was silent. Then slowly, one ambassador began tapping their appendage against their desk. Then another. Soon the entire chamber was filled with the galactic equivalent of applause. 5 years later, the galaxy looked different. Human colonies dotted the frontier. But now they existed alongside alien settlements, mixed species. Admiral Jiwon Choi stood 200 meters below the city of Seoul, in a room that didn't exist on any map. The walls were covered in screens showing data that would terrify every species in the galaxy. Ship counts, weapon specifications, strategic targets. This was Earth's real war room, and it had been hidden since the day humanity first shook hands with aliens. Around her, officers worked at their stations. Some wore the uniform of Earth's Navy. Others came from the Army, the Marines, the Aerospace Corps. Every branch of Earth's military was represented here, real military. Not the small ceremonial force the galaxy was allowed to see. Admiral, said a young officer. Message received from Ambassador Park. Protocol Unchained is active. Jiwon nodded. She had been waiting for this message for 12 years, hoping it would never come, but preparing for the moment it did. She touched a control on her desk and the main screen changed. It now showed the outer solar system, beyond Neptune, where human eyes rarely looked and alien sensors couldn't reach. There, in the darkness, thousands of lights appeared. Ships, massive warships, each one larger and more powerful than anything the Velkrim had ever built. They had been constructed slowly, carefully, in secret shipyards hidden in asteroid fields and on the dark sides of frozen moons. For 12 years they had waited, silent, patient. Now they woke up. Begin fleet activation, Jiwan ordered. All ships to combat readiness. Prepare for deployment. Down the corridor, in another secure room, Dr. Hyeji Kang watched her own screens with mixed feelings. She was Earth's chief weapons designer, the woman who had created the tools that would soon be unleashed on an unsuspecting galaxy. She was brilliant, maybe the smartest person alive, and she hated what her intelligence had built. They didn't give us a choice, said a voice beside her. Colonel Banhua stood there, arms crossed. He ran the weapons testing program. We warned them. They laughed. I know, Hyeji said quietly. She pulled up a file on her screen. Weapons data. Things she had designed in secret, tested in the empty places between planets. I just wish what? That we were actually weak? Banhua shook his head. They would have conquered us eventually. Better to be strong and choose peace than be weak and have no choice at all. Hyeji knew he was right. When Earth first encountered the galactic community, the government had faced a terrible decision. Show their military strength and risk being treated as dangerous savages, or hide it and appear weak. They had chosen to hide, to observe, to learn the galaxy's ways. But they had never stopped preparing for war, because humans knew something the peaceful species had forgotten. Predators exist. And eventually, one of them would come for Earth. The Velcrim were those predators. Mars Colony is reporting Velcrim ships entering their space. An officer called out. Count as 200 vessels. They're not responding to hails. Jiwon's jaw tightened. Mars Colony. 50,000 people lived there. Families. Children. The Velcrim were moving fast, trying to strike before humanity could react. They thought they could destroy a human colony and Earth would surrender. They were wrong. Where is Captain Taiyang? Jiwon asked. The Shadow of Soul is already in position, Admiral. He anticipated the attack. Jiwon allowed herself a small smile. Taiyang Li was young for a ship captain, only 30 years old. But he was also fearless and brilliant. His ship, the Shadow of Soul, was a stealth destroyer. The galaxy didn't know ships like that existed. They were about to learn. In space near Mars, the Velcrim fleet moved in formation. 200 warships, their hulls painted in the red and black of the Empire. They were confident. Why wouldn't they be? Mars Colony had only 3 small defense stations. The battle would be over in minutes. Commander Vex stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching Mars grow larger on the viewing screen. He had studied human defenses. Weak shields, slow weapons. Their ships were toys compared to Velcrim war vessels. All ships target the defense stations, Vex ordered. Destroy them first, then move on the colony itself. No survivors. Thrace wants to send a message. His weapons officer began targeting solutions. That's when the alarm started. Commander, sensors detecting something. Unknown contact, bearing. The Shadow of Soul appeared like a ghost. One moment, empty space. The next, a ship decloaking right in the middle of the Velcrim formation. It was smaller than their warships, sleek and dark, covered in angles that made sensors slide right off it. What is that? Vex demanded. On the bridge of the Shadow of Soul, Captain Taiyang Li smiled. He was young, with sharp eyes and hands that moved across his controls like a pianist. His crew was small, only 40 people, but each one was trained for this exact moment. All weapons free, Taiyang said calmly. Show them what we brought. The Shadow of Soul opened fire. But these weren't the slow, weak weapons the Velcrim expected. Railguns launched projectiles at impossible speeds, moving so fast they couldn't be dodged. Each round hit with the force of a small nuclear weapon. Missiles followed, hundreds of them, each guided by artificial intelligence that learned and adapted in microseconds. And the energy weapons. Oh, the energy weapons. Directed energy beams that could punch through shields like they weren't there. The galaxy used lasers. Humanity had moved beyond lasers decades ago. The first Velcrim ship exploded. Then the second. Then 5 more. The Velcrim fleet tried to scatter, tried to return fire, but they were too slow. The Shadow of Soul moved through their formation like a knife through paper, destroying everything it touched. Impossible, Vex shouted. How are they doing this? He would never learn the answer. A railgun round hit his flagship's reactor, and the ship vanished in a ball of light. In the war room beneath Sol, officers watched the battle in silence. It was over in 15 minutes. 200 Velcrim ships became debris. The Shadow of Sol had taken minor damage to its shields. Nothing serious. Mars colony is secure, an officer reported. Captain Taeyang reports 0 civilian casualties. Ji-won nodded. Broadcast the footage. All channels, every language. I want every species in the galaxy to see this. Admiral, that will reveal our capabilities. That's the point, Ji-won interrupted. They need to understand what they're facing. They need to know that our warning was real. Within an hour, every government in the galaxy received the same transmission. Footage of the Battle of Mars, showing 200 Velcrim warships destroyed by a single human vessel. The video was clear, detailed, showing exactly how outmatched the Velcrim had been. The message that accompanied the footage was simple. You were warned. In the council chamber, species that had laughed at humanity's threats now watched in silence. The footage played again and again on the main screen. They saw the human ship move with speed and grace their vessels couldn't match. They saw weapons that made their own look primitive. They saw 200 ships destroyed in minutes. This must be a trick, someone said. Computer graphics. Humans lie. It's real, said the director. Its voice was quiet, almost frightened. Our sensors in that sector confirm it. The Velcrim Third Fleet is gone. On the Velcrim homeworld, Emperor Corvin watched the same footage. His commanders stood around him, their scales pale with shock. How? Corvin demanded. How did they hide this from us? They've been building in secret, Admiral Dren said. All these years, while we thought they were weak, they were preparing. My lord, if one ship can do this, imagine what their full fleet— Then we bring more ships, Corvin roared. Alert the other empires. Form an alliance. The humans have revealed their strength, but they cannot stand against the entire galaxy. Dren hesitated. My lord, perhaps we should negotiate. Negotiate? Corvin's claws extended. They destroyed an entire fleet. This is an insult that demands blood. Send messages to the Corthan Dominion, the Hexid Union, the Vrax Collective. Tell them the humans are a threat to us all. Together, we will crush them. In the war room, Ji-won watched as intelligence reports came in. 6 more species were joining the Velcrim. They called themselves the Unity Pact. Together they had over 5,000 warships. Against humanity's 300 visible ships, it seemed overwhelming. But they were counting on the wrong numbers. How many ships can we deploy? Ji-won asked. 3,000 are fully operational, an officer replied. Another 500 will be ready within a week. Ji-won did the math in her head. The Unity Pact had 5,000 ships. Humanity had 3,000. But human ships were better, faster, deadlier. The question was whether that technological advantage would be enough. Dr. Hyeji entered the war room. She looked tired. Admiral, I've been running simulations. The Unity Pact will likely target our core colonies, Earth, Mars, Titan, Europa. They'll try to force a quick surrender. Let them come, Ji-won said. We'll meet them at Kepler Station. That's far enough from Earth to protect civilians, but close enough to defend our territory. Admiral, Hyeji said quietly, a lot of people are going to die. On both sides, I know. Ji-won's face was hard. We gave them a warning. We showed them what we could do. If they still choose war, then we finish it. Across the galaxy, fleets began to move. The Unity Pact gathered their ships, confident in their numbers. Humanity gathered their secret fleet, knowing that everything had changed. The peaceful years were over. The galaxy had forced their hand, and now humanity would show them exactly what they had to